We thank you all for joining us for this awesome panel on careers in national security and intelligence. And I think in my intros, I will also ask each of the panelists to say where they went to undergrad, what they studied in school, because that's what Alan asked. So for me, I went to University of Michigan for undergrad, and I studied political science as my major, and I had two minors in European studies and African and African American studies. And so I'm just gonna introduce, well, at least basically introduce all my panelists first, and then they'll provide a little background into their careers, hopefully keep it to 2 to 3 minutes. But in terms of our panelists, we have Sandra Auchter, we have Ms. Rita Thompson, Charles Carithers, and Chandra Osann. So thank you so much for joining us. And why don't we start with Sandra to start just basically telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dig a little deeper. So again, 2 to 3 minutes if possible. I know we're going to have great conversation, so looking forward again to hearing from you all. So Sandra, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure, not a problem. So I'm a native Washingtonian. Went to Georgetown University. I studied regional studies at the School of Foreign Service. And the region I studied was Africa. Currently I'm the Deputy Associate Director for Capabilities at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. I've been here for 20 years. I started out as an analyst, not straight out of college. I had a couple of other jobs before then. And it's in operations within NGA. Moved up, became a senior executive in 2015. And actually my first assignment as a senior executive was managing the office that I started in as an analyst. So it was pretty cool. Anyway, I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to chatting with all of you.
Okay. Rita, why don't you go next?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rita Sampson, and I am the Chief Diversity Officer for the U.S. Intelligence Community. I work in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Today marks my 23rd year to the day in federal service. I was trying to figure that out before we started, and I was like, is today August 25th? Oh my God, this is my anniversary. So very quickly, I'm a graduate of the College of William & Mary in Virginia. You have to say the whole thing. I majored in political science. And then I went on to law school at Wake Forest University, where I graduated some years ago. And have worked in a number of positions, both as a lawyer, a litigator, all through federal sector. And then I found my way into this U.S. intelligence community thing, and it's been great. So a number of careers, happy to share more as we go on, and thank you for having me.
Charles?
All right, good evening, everyone. Charles Carithers here. I'm currently a principal at Cornerstone Government Affairs. We're a consulting and lobbying organization based in DC, but with 11 offices throughout the country. I spent 11 years in the United States intelligence community, 2 years at DIA doing counterterrorism work, deployed to Iraq with special forces, doing some of this, doing some of that. Then I came over to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and I was there for about 9 years, 3 years in the National Counterterrorism Center, and then a few years in ODNI's policy division, where I developed national level policies that govern and kind of oversee the whole intelligence community, all 17 intelligence community elements. I also spent 2 years on Capitol Hill, 1 year as a Brookings Institution Fellow, where I advised Senator Tom Carper on national security matters, and most recently as a national security advisor to Chairman Benny Thompson on the Committee on Homeland Security. So I'm happy to be here this evening and share my insights and thoughts, and I think it'll be a great conversation. Oh, but before I pass it off to my former colleague, class of 2005, Morehouse College, sociology major, and class of 2007, Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government.
Awesome. And then Chandra?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chandra Osann. I am currently the Deputy Director of Lateral Innovation at the Office of Director of National Intelligence. I attended and graduated from George Mason University with a degree in art studio back in good old 2001. And that's been basically my entire career. I like to say I stand at the intersection of graphic design and design thinking. So a graphic designer by trade, I started my career creating graphics for private sector in Boeing. And I later moved into government supporting analytic teams at National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency before finally landing at ODNI as chief of the National Counterterrorism Center's media design team. So after 8 years of leading that team, I pursued growth opportunities, moving into leading a data science team, and then finally landing in my current position in the Lateral Innovation Division, where we focus on making innovation easy for officers across the government. And that's my story.
So this question is for everybody. So we'll do a round robin, and I'll direct. So for on my screen, it's Rita, Sandra, Charles, Chandra. So in this order. So the question I have for all of you, and I think a lot of folks probably in DC ask, is how did you get your job? And then, or maybe your first job in particular. And then what role did networking play in you getting your job? Especially Chandra, you with your undergraduate degree, no one would have maybe expected you being in the roles that you are now. So in terms of how networking played a role in you getting your first job, and then of course, you all have had great careers since probably that first gig, and what role networking played there. So Rita, could you please start, and then I'll direct the order in which I would love you all to answer.
Okay, absolutely. So that first job was many years ago, so everything has changed, except for the importance of who you know and how you activate your network, and also how hungry are you. So when I graduated from law school, I had no job whatsoever, and the job that I wanted, I had to have passed the bar first. So I was just waiting for my bar results. But at the same time, I needed to eat. So hunger will drive you to be bold and to be brave. And so I would take my resume, this is back in the day before the internet was hot, and I would walk into offices where I wanted to work, and I would lay it on the table and say, I need to talk to somebody. And that's what I did. And I actually ended up getting 2 job offers by doing just that. It was really crazy bold and what have you. But then ultimately, the job I chose was because my brother knew somebody who offered me a role as an entry-level attorney in the Virginia Attorney General's office, where I just went in and I told the people, listen, I have no experience, but I am good at my craft, whatever my craft is, whatever my undertaking is, I move to be the best. And if you hire me, you will never regret it. And that opened the door. But it was that informal family, who knows somebody, and the hunger that drove that. Now, fast forward, I'll skip over a lot. When it came to a job in the US intelligence community, I literally had no clue what the intelligence community was. I just went to USA Jobs, which is where all of the federal sector jobs are supposed to be. And I randomly applied for a job because of the skills that I brought to the table, and then began to understand when I got the interview what the US intelligence community does, because you have to know deeply what you're applying for before you go in for an interview. And so that's how I found out about the intelligence community. I've come to know, as a senior executive in the intelligence community, that we are responsible for 17 different agencies. You will never find a boring day ever in the day. Anything that you touch from a national security perspective is informed by intelligence. And so I'm really privileged because I get to tell people what the intelligence community does, and encourage you that even if you've never heard of the intelligence community, go look it up, give it a shot, and just apply. Now, networking now is everything. And I know that the rest of the panelists will emphasize that, but it really is. You must have a diverse network and keep it very active. And it's not cheating, it is how you get ahead.
Oh, I think you're on mute.
Very direct kind of experience getting into the intelligence community. I started working at the Girl Scouts right after college because I couldn't pass the Foreign Service exam. I'm still torn up about that. It turned out okay though. But I really wanted to really leverage my major, poli-sci major from Georgetown. They weren't hiring a lot during that time, and so I had to basically bide my time. And I applied for a job on USA Jobs. I was temping in another place. I looked at jobs that took my major, and it was this place called the National Imagery and Mapping Agency. And I just looked down and it's like, okay, they do? Okay, I applied there. I had no idea what I was going to be doing, none. So I went in. It took almost a year to get my clearance. I mean, I had fingerprints and you've got to do a drug test. It's a whole lot. And I almost gave up, but you just got to persevere and just get through it. Came in for an interview at the Navy Yard. The Navy Yard 20 years ago, by the way, does not look like the Navy Yard now. It's really nice. However, I just went into this nondescript building, had an interview, and was hired on the spot. So networking didn't really play a role in me getting my first job, but every single assignment, even when I was an analyst as a GS8, has been through people that I know. I can't remember the last time I've actually had an interview. It really is knowing the right people, having the right people advocate for you, and letting you know ahead of time before jobs are even advertised that you should consider that. So it really truly is once you're in, especially, it's not, like you said, Rita said, it's not cheating. It's just how things are done.
Yeah, thank you. So I owe my first job directly because of networking, and I can't stress enough how valuable it is to network with your colleagues, your peers, and really individuals who are just within, the industry that you're trying to get into. So when I was in graduate school, we had these national security fellows. So a national security fellow, they may be called different under different names at different institutions, but typically senior members of an executive branch agency or a military, and they take a 1-year sabbatical at a graduate school. So I joined this terrorism discussion group. This was I want to say 2006. Joined a terrorism discussion group that was student led by the various students at different graduate schools at Harvard. And me and this national security fellow, I'm kind of like struck up a natural bond because we're the only two individuals from the Kennedy School in this terrorism discussion group. So after the discussion group would end, everyone else would go back to their apartments or their homes, and me and him, we would hang out all night, talking about random topics, as a friend, as any of us would when we hang out with our friends. Some of them were policy discussions. Some of them were just random, like sports and life. And one day he just asked me, he said, "Hey, would you ever think about doing some counterterrorism work for the military?" I said, "Yeah, I'd be interested in that." And he said, "When you get back to your apartment, send me your resume." I did just that, and I'm not embellishing here. The next morning, his boss called me on the phone. I said, "Hey, Jeff passed me your resume. He said you're really sharp and that you're a good guy. And I see that you went to Morehouse College, deployed with some men from Morehouse College back in the day, stand-up guys. I'm going to give you a job." 2 weeks later, my package came via FedEx. So I didn't have to experience USA Jobs where many, many resumes go to get buried. There's a reason they call USA Jobs the black hole of resumes. I was a direct hire purely off of networking. It just sort of just fell into my lap. So I can't stress enough the importance, the value of, you know, going outside. Even if you're an introvert, it's important to network, because you want to socialize with your peers. And when you progress through your career, you're establishing your own brand. You want people to say, hey, I know this guy, I know this woman. They do good work. They're pretty sharp. Go for him, go for her.
Mm-hmm. Definitely interested in hearing your story for sure. How you got your first gig and how you've been maneuvering since.
Well, as you heard from my little introduction, you know, I followed the art throughout my career, and only have just within the last 2 or 3 years kind of gone off of that beaten path. But so it's what I wanted to do pretty much since I was a kid. My parents worked in government, and we'd go to Family Day. And I remember going to Family Day and seeing the building where the other artists and designers worked. And I'm like, that's where I want to be. Now, cut to a few years after that, I ended up getting, as part of, our parents made us aware rather of the summer internship program. And I did take advantage of that and got my clearance when I was a freshman in college. So I was very fortunate and blessed to be able to do that. Oddly enough, I did not follow that path. I didn't go and apply to work in government right after I graduated. As a matter of fact, when I was in I think it was my junior year, I was working at Circuit City, you know, another part-time job, you know, keeping things. Circuit City was a good place, people. It was really good. But anyways, I was working at Circuit City, and a gentleman came in, and he needed a CD, and I found a CD for him, and he was so impressed by my go-getter type of attitude that he said, hey, come work for me, Boeing. And it was through that job that I actually got reintroduced to the community. I was able to maintain my clearance while working at Boeing, because I was working on classified contracts there, doing graphics for classified contracts and other things. And I took some continuing education courses. And while I was taking those continuing education courses, because I wanted to learn multimedia, I wanted to add to my tool belt. And somebody kept trying to pitch me. Come on, you got to come work for my company. My company's so cool. Finally, I gave in. I was like, all right, man, look, I'll go to your little company thing, and I'll see what it's about. And I did. And I ended up actually getting hired by the recruiters at their event. And I started working for, at the time it was NEMA, National Imagery and Mapping Agency. And I was there at that building, Sandra. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Rat traps out in the front.
Rat traps and a barbecue place across the street. It was a great place to work. And I loved it. And I learned so much from the people there, from the relationships that I built there and established there, and even the network that I grew there. And I actually saw additional opportunities across the river over at the Defense Intelligence Agency. So I hopped on over there, and I ended up being even though I was classified as an analyst, my government boss there allowed me to do visualization in an analytic role. And so I supported an analytic team and did visualizations for them. And finally, while I was at DIA, I decided to move over to a civilian role. And ever since then, you know, the sky's been the limit in that I've been trying to take advantage of every opportunity that's been put in front of me. I had always wanted to work with a design team. I'd always been a singleton. So at NEMA, I was kind of the only visualization person. At DIA, I was the only visualization person. And I had this desire to be around other media folks and learn and grow from them. And I found an opportunity over at ODNI back in 2011, and I've been there ever since. And, you know, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But you'd be surprised about how many other designers there are, how many photographers there are. It's insane, the community that we've built. But not to belabor anything, I did want to add on to what they were saying about networks. Networks are so important, not only just having a network, but having a diverse network. I'm sure that Charles can probably tell you that person he was in class with probably wasn't the same person as him, probably didn't have the same background and experiences as he did. And so you will find that having, you can have your close network and that's all well and good, but you should diversify and start to reach out and broaden your network, because you won't believe the number of opportunities that will come with diversifying your network, and then also building relationships with those people. There's just so much goodness to be had from that.
Rita and Charles, I have a question specifically for you. So what skills have permitted you to succeed in your various roles, particularly when you were, well, Charles is now out, but out of government, but what skills permitted you both to succeed in your roles? Was it writing, being able to brief in a very concise manner? Could you maybe provide some tips there, especially for folks that are very much interested in working in national security and intelligence?
Yeah.
Sure. So, yeah. So I think one of the most important skill sets to have is the ability to critically think, and the ability to adapt. And so with critical thinking, so one thing that's very amazing about the IC is that you'll have, people who majors in forestry, or people who are music majors, poli-sci majors. I was a sociology major. People who majors in educational backgrounds where you wouldn't necessarily think would translate well to a career in national security, but they could look at a problem, address a problem, and ask relevant questions and dig deeper. Ability to look at something and ask these tough questions. So the ability to critically think is so valuable. Like, what value do you add if you're the most educated person in the world and you can't critically think? That's not helpful in the world of national security. So that's just some food for thought. And adaptability. So the intelligence community, we write and we brief a certain way. And typically when you EOD, when you enter on duty, you go through a training course, or you may be assigned a mentor, and you kind of like learn the tricks of the trade or tradecraft. So it's a lot more formalized now than when I first started my career. Because when I first got started, I was thrown to the wolves, and that's where the adaptability comes in. It's like, hey, we need you to go brief this principal or this politician on this particular topic. And what makes intelligence officers great briefers is very early in the infancy of our careers, we have to brief the most senior levels of government or the most senior levels of industry. And so literally by year 2, you're perfectly comfortable briefing 2, 3, 4-star generals, politicians, principals and CEOs of companies, because you've been doing that every week, for 2 years. So it's important to be adaptable.
I'm going to echo what Charles is saying about critical thinking, but I'm going to take it in a little bit of a different direction, because when I came into the intelligence community, I'm sort of an outsider coming in. I've been there probably almost 10 years now, but most of my career was not in this. And a lot of people kept talking about, you got to be a critical thinker, but then nobody defined what critical thinking actually is. And I'm like, well, am I critically thinking? Did I meet the mark? I don't know. But because I had sort of these skills that developed as an attorney, being able to look at a set of facts that don't make sense and pulling them all together to make sense, that's one part of critical thinking. Being able to take an assignment where nobody has told you do this, 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 and this to get it done. No one's going to tell you that. They're just going to tell you, I need the product. And then your brain has got to figure out how to pull the pieces of everything together to make it happen, right? And so it's about puzzle solving in a very confident way. And I also think that writing, excellent writing, finished products, and public speaking skills. Who would have known, like last year, I had the opportunity to speak before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, pretty much the whole committee, and to be grilled. And you have to have a certain level of confidence and calm and just public speaking, knowing your craft. And so I think those are the key things. But one more step back, because a lot of people still don't know what the intelligence community is or does. And so that's my great job, being able to share with people what we do. Essentially, we find information wherever that information resides, and we give it to policymakers and decision makers, whether or not that be members of Congress, the president, the National Security Council, the military that's out there in the battlefields fighting the wars. They all need information. And our information comes from overhead satellite imagery, mapping. It might come from humans, relationships. It might come from any number of sources. And then we have people, a whole infrastructure of people, not just analysts, but graphic designers, all of that pull it together to make sense. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we do, and just be excellent at your craft. That's it.
Then Chandra and Sandra, can you talk about the clearance process and what that was like for you all? Because you both mentioned it in your initial comments. So Chandra, do you want to start in terms of what that was like? Because especially there's this, people think it's a mysterious process. And I think especially for, the Black community or communities of color, where maybe we're not really as well informed around what that process looks like. For example, my parents are originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I didn't know that I had initially, when I filled out my SF-86, that to list, my cousins and stuff. So can you talk about what that process was like for you both? So Chandra, do you want to start?
Sure. And everybody else, feel free to chime in.
Yeah.
For me, it was like doing an essay for college. I felt it was just homework from filling out the forms and going back into my past and remembering who all my friends are and any relatives that I'm very close with. So that was really difficult, only because I didn't think to keep everybody's, personal information as far as, addresses and things. But other than that, other than it being a long homework project, I found it to be a little bit easy. I was a freshman in college. There really wasn't much detail for me to provide. A little bit of a nerdy goody two-shoes in high school and throughout college. So my story was quite short. I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have a lot to divulge. I did, you speak to the investigator and they check your credentials basically with people that are close to you. At least that was what I was told. And other than that, going through the Q&A as far as, talking about what you've done in your past, like I said, mine was quite blank and dry. So I really didn't have much to share. But I'm sure, I know other people around me have had an even longer process because I did mine so early in life. Mine only took a few months to go through. So I was in school, the investigator came and he met me on my college campus. We had those initial interviews. And by the time summer came around, I was in my internship, in my cleared position. And so there really wasn't much of a wait there. And so mine is kind of like that ideal story, but I know not everybody has that same story to tell. So again, if anybody else wants to chime in about their experiences, mine was pretty easy. And then just maintaining that same level of trust so that anytime, you get reinvestigated, you can, stay employed and keep a good story. So yeah, that was really my experience. Very, very upfront and very simple and very short-lived.
And Sandra, how about you?
Yeah, mine was not. So I had already graduated college and done all the things that you do in college. So I think the trick is, and I'm a child of immigrants too, so I had family all over the world. So I think that took a little bit longer as well, trying to remember who lives where and how much contact I had with them. So I think the trick is just to, they're not expecting perfect at all, right? And now the last few years, particularly with marijuana being legal in some states, et cetera, literally just put your whole life there on the paper and just let them know what you did, because you're going to find out anyway. But it's really about being honest. It's demonstrating that the people that you hang out with are not criminals or terrorists, or, just that they're loyal. So you have to, make sure that that's straight. Your finances, that's something that people do not really pay attention to. You really have to be careful about credit. They want to make sure that you can't be bribed, and that you wouldn't sell out your country as well. So I think it varies depending on the individual. If you've traveled overseas, if you spent time studying abroad, that's going to take a little bit longer too. But it can take upwards of a year. I think, Chandra, depending on when you get your clearance going, it may take a couple of months up to a year. And then every 5 years, they do a reinvestigation as well. And it doesn't take nearly as long. It's much easier process. They'll talk to your supervisors, talk to your neighbors. You need to file a disclosure, financial disclosure as well. And then they do random drug tests as well. So basically, your life is an open book. So if you're not comfortable with your life being an open book, being in national security and intelligence is not for you.
Laura, can I please add to that?
Sure. Go ahead.
One important thing where a lot of people get hung up on is the polygraph. And what folks need to realize is it's the easiest test you're ever going to take, because you know all the right answers. The only thing is, no matter how awkward, inappropriate, or offensive you perceive the question to be, answer honestly, and you'll have no problems.
So I have a question then for Charles, since you're the last person on my mind, but I think this is more a lighter question. So is working in the IC or national security like we see it on TV?
No. What I used to do when I used to go to college campuses and recruit students for the IC when time would permit. And one thing that I noticed is that at certain campuses, there's just a natural reluctance for students to come to the intelligence community booth. So myself and a colleague of mine, Sophia, we sat down. We thought, how can we, help mitigate this? And we said, well, why don't we reach out to the professors we know at these institutions and see if we could teach an Intelligence Community 101 or National Security 101 module where we explain what the intelligence community is, but more importantly, what it is not. So there's certain things that have been glorified in Hollywood that's just so inaccurate, like having phones and skiffs, having cell phones in skiffs, blatant disregard for policy, for life. We have intelligence community directives where we have duties to warn other individuals, foreign or not, if we think their life is in danger. So we did we did a decent job at kind of dispelling these myths, because so much has been glorified. Everyone thinks about 24 or Mission Impossible or James Bond. Don't get me wrong. There's an operational component to the intelligence community,
but their bread and butter is intelligence analysis. And a lot of that is not covered in Hollywood. Really, you're in a cubicle, you're staring at a computer, you're having meetings, and you're typing away or you're having phone calls.
Charles, you're making it sound really dreary.
He makes it sound so
No, some of it's cool. Some of it, like travel. My very, very first government TDY was to Vicenza, Italy for 3 weeks. I was not mad.
No, that's not bad at all.
Yeah.
So the cool, I have had some fun adventures as part of the intelligence community. One of the former directors took me out to Andrews Air Force Base, and I got to ride on his plane with him. In one day, we went with Charles down to Morehouse.
Wow.
Then we touched base from Morehouse and ended up in Alabama. And then we came on back like you're driving to work. It was just a normal work day, but you're on a jet with Air Force escorts and Secret Service the entire way. That was not a normal cubicle kind of work day, and that's for sure. I've had the privilege of sitting in the Situation Room at the White House. Just amazing places that I just didn't really envision ever being. And I mentioned that, being on the Hill. Some of the real tough challenges that come our way that we have to make decisions on, working in civil liberties and privacy. So that's the whole thing. How do you trust the intelligence community? Embedded within the community are people like me in my former role, where we're overseeing our activities to make sure that they comply with the law, that they comply with the Constitution, and that we're our own internal watchdogs, right? And so there's a lot. I never got to be an analyst, Charles, but I think that analyst role is the bread and butter of what you do. It is how you handle the information. It is the core mission. But there's so many other additional roles out there as well.
Yeah, and I would love to just add on a little bit as far as the exciting, being able to, my team and I, we got to support some really just serious crises. So when a crisis would happen, we already knew that we had to make plans to stay late, to work late. And some of the bigger, more well-known ones, they actually created a lot of opportunities for visibility for me and for my team. As a matter of fact, one of the members of my team, because she ended up having to do the majority of the work on the multimedia side, she ended up being able to go to the White House and present her piece to the vice president. You can't beat that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you never know where your job is going to take you. Yeah, maybe one day you're like trudging away at your desk, trying to work on a graphic in our case, or make a map or make an interactive media piece. But then the next day you might be having to brief that same piece, at the White House. And even if you're not able to get that face time, know that your work, it's contributing to that larger mission. I think that's one thing that we always have to remind ourselves every day is that what's the so what of what we're doing, and the so what is, protecting the nation. And so, we'd be able to say that, wow, this product that we are providing, that we're delivering, sometimes in partnership, sometimes it's a standalone graphic, but we knew that maybe that day that piece was going to be seen by the president. So it's really pretty awesome that even though you're sitting in your cubicle, know that your piece has so much value at a larger scale. You know what I mean? Just seeing that big picture, I think is the takeaway.
So this is my final question. So I want to leave enough time for Q&A because there's some really good questions in here. So my question for all of you to close, at least my part of this panel, is what advice do you have for the next generation of national security and IC employees? Because a lot of folks in our chat are either already in the field or they're looking to transition in. So Rita, want to go first, and then I'll go in the order that I see on my screen.
Sure. I would say really you know, everything's been consolidated out down to a couple of really good websites. Intelligencecareers.gov has the best way of looking at all the intelligence community in one place and applying for jobs in multiple agencies. And just think about it from a multiple agency perspective. You might think that you want to work for one agency, but perhaps it's because you don't know what the rest of the agencies do. And so you just get your foot into the door at one of those agencies. Once you're in and you have your clearance, you can go work in any one of those agencies. We have a collaborative relationship known as joint duty. And so you can go from place to place. So I would say, look for student interns. This is for students. Listen, if nothing else, the deadline for all of these student applications is September. And it is almost September now. So if you want to be an intern, you have to get your application in no later than like the 30th of September and go to intelligencecareers.gov.
All right.
Okay.
So I think I'll touch on a couple of different things. Please write well. If you don't write well, learn how to. It's really, really important. Whatever job that you have to be able to convey the information that you're providing. And so really practice that. Just write a little something every single day. Languages are still extremely important. So, and the hard languages, so Chinese, Russian, Farsi, those are languages. Languages are extremely important. Data has also become extremely important as well. Data is the foundation for everything. Part of my portfolio is AI and automation, and the foundation for that is how it is that we use and collect our data. So if you have any coding skills, there are lots of classes that you can take online that are free. Just practice that. And GIS is another skill that I think would be applicable for a lot of you as well. So those are sort of foundational. If you're going to be an analyst, those are definitely things that you want to make sure that you have in your toolkit. But those are some of the things I think are really important for you to, if you're not majoring in that, to be able to acquire those skills. Have curiosity about what's happening in the world and have that understanding as well and how we fit into that. That's also important. So those are the things that I would recommend for you.
Yes, so three things. The first of which are for the younger generation, and I can't stress this enough. Please, please, please watch what you post on social media. I know the younger crowd, like, they live their life on social media. They broadcast every single thing they do, how they move, where they go, where they live, sometimes even listing their address. So you want to be cognizant of that for two reasons. One, foreign intelligence services comb all social media sites, all social media platforms. And you want to, when you become an intelligence community, you want a smaller footprint, if that makes sense. Second, I often say, don't post anything that your grandmother would be embarrassed about, because you're now an employee of the government, and God forbid if, like Rita Sampson, testifying before Congress, and then they pull up her social media feed, and it's full of like xenophobic, racist, or sexist statements. That's the last thing you want. Second, get mentors. Find mentors that do not look like you. It's very, very important to have a diverse group of individuals who can guide you, who you can seek input in, and hopefully can vouch for you when the time comes for you to either be promoted or for you to seek another position or for a good reference. So seek mentors that don't look like you. And third, executive education is so important. So once you become a government employee, you can take typically each office, each individual is allotted a certain amount of money to continue education. And so for me,
I took a slew of executive education classes from the Brookings Institution. And it was those executive education classes that led me to my experience in my career on Capitol Hill advising politicians. So seek out executive education because there's always something you can get smart on. We all don't know everything. We can always learn. We can always tighten certain skill sets. So please seek out executive education, and you don't have to come out of pocket for it.
Mm-hmm. To close.
Kind of pulling from what everybody else said, build that network. If you don't already have one, build one. Some people are using LinkedIn, use LinkedIn. As far as the internships, if you haven't already applied, definitely do what Rita said and apply now. Otherwise, there's other opportunities like the Virtual Student Federal Service Program, which is an unpaid internship, but it does give you exposure to the entire federal government, to include the intelligence community. So I've had several virtual interns. It allows you to work remotely, but you still get that experience and you still build your network, which I think is wonderful. And like Charles said, diversify. Make sure you have that diverse network of people around you that can support you when the time comes, and that you can also support. Reciprocity is a thing. Build relationships. Relationships are super important. If it wasn't for the relationships that I built early on, I don't think I would have had a lot of the opportunities come my way. And then that same vice versa, I wouldn't have been able to help others if I didn't have those relationships with them. Also, definitely say yes to opportunities that are presented. I am guilty of passing up opportunities, and I don't want to see anybody else that comes after me say no to an opportunity because of self-doubt or fear of failure. So say yes to the opportunities. There's a reason why they asked you, and it's because they saw something in you and knew you could do the job. So say yes if you have the opportunity. Otherwise, say no. And lastly, don't doubt your talent and skills. I'm always telling people the things that I have to tell myself because I didn't hear those things, coming up. And so please do not doubt your talent and skills. You have something to offer. You have something to contribute. From this conversation, you've heard that there are so many opportunities. It's not just analysis. It's not just policy. It's geospatial information analysis. It is graphic design. It is IT. It is human resources. There are so many ways that you contribute to national security and to the federal government. And so, just take advantage of all these opportunities. Go to USA Jobs, ask questions, seek help, and again, just be fearless.
Awesome. So now I'm going to from the text chat, and if you could answer these questions concisely, that'd be greatly appreciated. So I want to get through as many as possible. So actually, Sandra, I'm going to have you answer two questions because one of them is directed directly at you.
Oh.
And this one question is, how did you shift to intelligence analyst mid-career? Any advice on how to do that? And then you also already touched on the language piece. And so someone asked, how important are language skills for working in national security and intelligence, and then which languages are significant? You already touched on Farsi, Mandarin, and all that, but maybe if you could quickly elaborate and answer those particular questions.
Yeah, so I think, again, languages are extremely important mid-career. So I have lots of folks that are within NGA. And by the way, NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, we're part of the IC, the 17 members of the IC, and we're also part of the Department of Defense. So we have two bosses, which is fun. We have the DNI and the SecDef. So I think one of the ways that you can transition if you want to work in operations, I went from operations and analysis to doing more of the technical side. So I'm in charge of all of that right now. And the way that you do that is networking, right? Get to know people, have a broad mentor network. Again, I have not interviewed for a position since I interviewed for my very, very first job. Mm-hmm. And the way that you're going to be able to know and understand about opportunities, the assignment that I'm in right now, I did not want to be the Deputy Associate Director for Capabilities. I was very happy managing an office, Eurasia and Africa, had the Russia portfolio. We were super, super busy and I was happy. And one of my mentors said, hey, this assignment is opening up before it was even announced, and said, I think you would be perfect for it. They need somebody who has your background and skills and operations to be able to come and understand the technical side. I don't know anything about AI and automation, y'all, and research. I just don't, right? But I know what it can do to provide that perspective that's invaluable. And so whatever it is that you're doing in your career right now, understand that you're bringing value to this other piece, and understand what that value is, and have that broad network so when those opportunities arise in that area that you want to be in, you're able to help make that transition.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that helps.
Great. And then this is a quick question. So one person said, are there opportunities for U.S. residents but not U.S. citizens? Or maybe Rita, you can answer that. No, right? Okay.
Citizenship is a requirement.
Okay. And then are there, I know, Rita, you mentioned a bunch of websites that have fellowships and different, especially the pathway and training programs. Are there anyone or do you have tips on how to navigate those in particular, especially as folks scan them?
So don't be exhausted by it. We are the government. We don't have the most beautiful, easy to navigate job portals. Do not be discouraged, right? We're trying to get there. But do not wait until midnight on the 30th to apply for the job that's due on the 30th. You need to set yourself a goal. I'll give you a goal now of September 15th. Have all your stuff in by that date. And then you don't have to worry about whether or not the system crashes or whether or not you didn't realize you needed all of that information to put into the application. Get it done. Just get it done.
And then, Chandra, how about this question I think would be good for you. What is a common mistake that you see? Well, actually, never mind. This should be for Charles. Sorry, because Charles was an analyst.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Charles. So this question should actually be for common mistake that you see early career intelligence analysts make.
Thinking they know everything. So one example, I was deployed to Iraq, and I presented something to a 3-star general, and I was confident I was correct. And in a room full of maybe 20 people or so, some of which who are my friends and colleagues in uniform, he said, "No, I don't think you're right." And I made the mistake of saying, "Well, sir, I think everything points to this direction. Can you provide me some additional context?" And he pointed to his stars, and he said, "That's the context right there." So it's thinking you know everything, and not being able to take criticism. So I think criticism is a good thing, and you should welcome it. So it's really tough to be in a national security field and you can't take criticism, because there may be conflicting views on what you're trying to produce. What you're trying to produce might go against the executive branch, what they're trying to put out, or their foreign policy objective, or their national security objective. So those things are some of the common mistakes I see. And also, and this goes back to Sandra's point. I'm trying to be concise here. I'm trying to be concise there. It's not taking a position that will challenge you, or not taking a position that's going to put you in your put you outside your comfort zone. When I came back from the Hill, I was asked if I want to do public affairs. I'm like, I've never engaged the press in my life. I don't want to talk to the press, but it's a skill set that I've never had. And I'm so grateful for it, because that opened up so many more doors for me.
Yeah.
Amen.
And then, so Chandra, I have one question for you, or anyone else. Feel free to pick from it, or or answer. So Alan Anderson asked, are there any departments you know that have been historically difficult for minorities to get entry-level careers in without certain credentials? Is there, have you, or is that something you haven't seen?
I haven't seen it. I have an optic that looks across all 17 agencies. It's not the credentials, it's just getting that first job, right? Because the credentials, you can have so many different degrees, so many different backgrounds, different schools. And I think that it's not what's on your resume, it's how you present it. Just keep in mind that you're likely to, if you get that interview, it'll likely be in front of like 4 people.
Yeah.
So you have to be ready to master a panel interview.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, that's something you really have to think about. You're not going in to talk to that one person. Those days are over.
Chandra, do you have anything to add to that? Or to
I love that Rita said that it's how you present yourself. I've had, experiences where I was hiring new people to my team, and some people came in, like this, low energy, just slouching, and didn't realize that this was their only shot. And they didn't tell their story. They didn't sell themselves well. It's not what's on your resume. It's like she said, it's how you present it. It's how you share your story with those people that are ready to hire you. I feel like that is so important because that's that make or break moment. It's like you get on stage, man, you gotta present yourself well.
I will say real quick, I really want to see more of us in operations in our core businesses for agencies.
Yeah.
We are not represented enough, right? So whatever agency you go to, obviously NGA is the best one, but whatever agency that you go to, look and see what that core business is. If it's human over at CIA, go there.
Okay.
If it's Mazant over at DIA or GeoWent in the analysis and source within operations, go to those places because you will generally have more visibility and more opportunities that are there.
Yes.
But we are just not represented the way we need to be.
I couldn't agree more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Rita.
No, I was just saying, I totally agree. The core mission, you need to understand what the mission of the intelligence community is. We have, I look at the statistics all day long. People of color are overrepresented in support roles, right? And so if you come into the door in a core mission role, an analyst role, do everything in your power to stay in that role, because sometimes there's a shiny object over there that might be, oh, they'll give me more money if I go work there. But that is a decision that can really set the trajectory of your career in a path that's going to be very difficult to undo. So just stay in that core mission if that's what you've aspired to.
Yeah.
And then here's my final question. Maybe Rita, you're well positioned to answer this question, because I think, we have some recent grads in the audience, but we also have people who are mid-career or senior.
Oh, just calling me old.
No, you have so much. Listen, I feel like you know about billets maybe that people don't know about, so this is why I'm asking you, because I feel like you might be the one to ask about these jobs. So what about mid-career folks who are looking to get into the IC? Maybe they've already had a specialization. You've mentioned being an attorney. How does that look like for folks that want to make maybe a lateral move into the IC or just are looking to change careers? And then we'll close from there.
I do think it is more difficult to come in as a lateral in the IC, and that's just the business of the government because we'd have to pay you more. So if you can get 3 people for less than 1 person for more, then sometimes that's the way that the business dictates. But if you're a specialist and you have those skills that are needed at that level, then your network is probably what's going to get you the attention to get you the job. And so if you're a mid-career professional, you got to start knowing people through these professional intelligence networks, things like this, and really work by telling people, I'm interested in a job in the intel community. Tell me what's opening, and kind of make your way. It's not impossible. It's just, it is more challenging. Those positions come open. And the last thing I'll say is there are certain things called term appointments. So if you're willing to take a term appointment, at a higher pay grade, say a 3-year term, then that is a good way to get in and then move around from there.
Well, thank you so much, Rita, Sandra, Charles, and Chandra, for taking times out of your busy schedules to take part in this panel. We're very grateful for all the insight that you have given to us. And hopefully, I hope that Alexandria and the BPIA team maybe have ways that folks could maybe get in touch with you and get more advice. But I've learned a lot from you guys, and I hope everyone in the audience as well. And I hope that everyone has a great evening. Goodbye, everybody.
You're an
Thank you so
awesome
much.
moderator. Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye, guys.